Welcome back to the weekly yarns. For those of you that's new, my name's Barry. The weather this week being absolutely atrocious. Blowing a gale, pouring a rain, being fairly mild, but at the same time, due to wind and rain, still couldn't get anything or get very little done. Got nothing done that we could film. If you were watching last week, you'll have seen that my Vectra was broken. The gasket between the valve cover and the top of the engine went and allowed oil back in, flooded the plugs out. Well, as I say, last week you'll have seen we got the gasket. I was going to film putting the gasket in, but the weather. I went out to put the gasket in and it was absolutely blowing a gale. It was dry and sunny, which is why I went out to do it that day, because it was, I think the next 3 or 4 days after that was forecast for rain and wind. So I went out, popped the gasket in, put it back together, and I think the oil must have damaged the coil pack because it's still missing on number 4 cylinder. So what I've ordered a coil tester, because it's really difficult to test those coil packs. You can put the plugs back in and lie it on the engine block and stand and watch it. But what I've ordered is a little coil tester that you put into the individual coils, earth it out. You can get somebody to crank the engine over and you can see the spark literally leaping across the joint if your coil's working. So I think it was about £10 off eBay. So I'm waiting for that to come. When it comes, we'll get it tested and we'll see what we're going to do with it from there. As I say, it's got 152,000 miles on the clock, so it doesn't owe us anything. You know, it's been a really good little car. But you've got to be mindful of what you're spending on them, haven't you, at that age? Because it's now, that's a 05, so that's 17-year-old. And I say 152,000 mile, so it's probably worth about £150. So we need to be mindful of what we're spending on it in order to keep it running. But never mind, we will have a look with the coils and then we will make a decision as to what's going to happen with it. So this yarn is going to be fairly short because this week we didn't get an awful lot done, as I said, due to the weather. I'll take you for a walk afterwards. I'll show you what we've done, where we are with the gearbox. As of this very moment, and as you'll have seen last night on my community part of the channel, the gearbox, the main gearbox, is back together. We've got the diff to put in and we've got the detents to put in and we've got our measurements to take. But the main bulk of the gearbox is back together, and as I say, I'll show you some video in a couple of minutes. But it will be short and sweet because that's all we've getting done this week. So, Monday, Thursday, we took some cattle away up to Acklet Mart, which is just on my doorstep here, about 10 mile up the road from me. Friday we nipped across, we went to Hexham with 5 bulls. I must admit, I do like going to Hexham Mart. It's got an absolutely wonderful canteen with some fantastic food. Teas, coffees, just everything's great there. The atmosphere in the mart's good. Buzzing, in fact. You can probably hear it on the audio of the film. I've got some footage of the 5 bulls going through the ring. And that was late on in the afternoon. That was about 2:30 in the afternoon. But it's a good day out. We enjoy going up there. It's nice just to see all the farmers and that and catch up with the people that know Gemma. 3 days out of a week this week. And the weather put pay to the rest of them. But I say, it doesn't matter what, even if we had 5 days off, we couldn't get nothing done because of the weather anyway. And what I got done was on an evening when we came back and I could get into the garage. And when I take you for a little walk around, you'll see, I off at the beginning of the week by putting the outer race in for the pinion bearing. We'll pop the outer race in, put the retaining washers on, 603'd it into position. When you have a look at that, it had to be rotating in the housing, and we now think it was the bearing outer race that wore away the washer because it was rotating, and then allowed the bearing outer race to slip backwards. We think that's what's happened now. So we've done that. We'll give it a good clean down with brake cleaning fluid. We've Loctited the bottom side rails in. Top side rails are in, a couple of nuts on the back. What else are we getting done? We're getting all the shafts. Ah, yes. When you come to reassemble your gearbox, the book says your selector rails and selector forks, they're pinned together with what they call a Mills pin. So the book says the easiest way to reassemble the gearbox is build the gearbox up, put the front casting on, knock the pins out of all 3 selector rails and take the forks off. Make sure you don't mix them up. So we did that. We've knocked the pins off, we've took the selector forks off the rails, everything got a real good clean so that when it goes back together it runs nicely together, because the idea is that you put your forks into the gears, you put your rails down through your castings, you can then insert your detents and pull your rails up without fighting the weight of the gears, because the forks are still not attached to the rails at this point. It's not until you get to the point where you've got your detents in and your lockouts in, you can then lift the gears, pop your pins back in. So that's what we did. And as I say, you'll see them. They're in there. They're all nice and clean. Everything's just about ready to go. But as I say, as of this very moment, right now, the gearbox is built up. I did that last night. And I'm busy editing the video. Can I just say to you guys, I apologise now for the first part of that video, which is putting the bearing race in, putting the rails in, and doing a few little jobs on the various shafts. The audio isn't the best because of the wind, and I went into the garage that night thinking that we could get a start and get some jobs done, film it. My roller shutter door at the end was rattling like hell. The wind was, and anybody who's got these plastic doors with the seals on will know what it's like if the wind whistles through the seals when you get a big gust. So I've tried to cut most of that out. So the audio is not the best, but never mind. You got to do what you got to do, and in order to keep things moving, that was, you know, I keep my fingers crossed for lovely, warm, sunny summer days, and they're not far away. They'll come again, but we cannot wait that length of time to get things done. We need to keep the tractor moving forward. We need to get this gearbox done, and it needs to get back into the frames, out the way. I cannot have it lying about on the floor because it just eats far too much space, and with the size and weight of it, it's not the easiest thing in the world to keep moving around, especially when you put the diff back in. The diff's got to weigh nearly as much as the gearbox does itself. Because I can manage the gearbox and I can manage the diff, but you can't manage the two when they're together. So the transmission manual shows you a diagram of a tool that you can make to put the detents in, and basically it's a 3/8 bar of steel with half of the diameter ground off at the end for 5/8 of an inch length, which allows you to go in, push the ball and spring down at the hole while you're sliding the rail along into this flat area that you've created, which is like 50% of the detent ball, and then you can swap places. So I've ordered some 3/8 steel. It's been dispatched. We're waiting for it to arrive. As soon as it arrives, we'll get the tool made and we'll get the detents popped in, and we will film that. I'll show you the tool. We'll film the detents going in. So if the steel hasn't arrived by Wednesday, I'll just pop it out as a very short video of just putting the detents in and the tools that we make for it. All right. So I had a conversation with Raymond during the week regarding the diff bearings, and in Raymond's opinion, he says, I don't think there's anything absolutely wrong with your bearings at all, because of, I described to him how they feel, the noise, there isn't any noise, there isn't any play in the bearing in the outer race against the balls. So Raymond was saying, in his opinion, he considers them to be good. He would put them back in. He was also saying that in his experiences of his lifetime, he has never changed a set of those bearings. Now, it's not to say they don't fail, it's just to say that Raymond, in all his experiences, has never changed a set of those bearings. And I'm absolutely convinced that in an email with Lance that I had, I'm sure Lance told me the same. I'm sure Lance said he hadn't had to change a pair of these bearings either. So, looks like they're going back in, doesn't it? Right then, this is the only thing we're getting done this week. Give you a quick whiz around it. The weather, as I say, the weather has just been absolutely atrocious. Now, this evening is probably the best time that we've had all week. And as I say, we're just getting back from the mart. So, let's have a look. You can see how dark it is. Oh, starting to get. Sun's way down. It'll start and chill before long, on it. Right, so this is where we are with our gearbox. Now, the video for this probably isn't out yet. Let's assume we can get it back together because of the weather. What the weather's got was stopped. So, side rails in. These have been Loctited into here, 35 pound feet. Pound foot, pound inches, pound feet. They've been screwed into there, Loctited in. They were, holes were sprayed, cleaned out, tap put through them, rails put in and Loctited in position. They were cleaned up, put through the holes, and just the nuts were put onto the bottom, just purely and simply to keep the hold of them, because we're nearly after I've done this video, I'm going to continue to put this back together. See how far we get tonight. Through the week, we took the selectors. Now, it does say in the handbook, when you are reassembling the gearbox, the way to reassemble it is, you build up all your components, you put your lid on, you pull the pin out of here. I think this is called a Mills pin or a Wills pin. I'll check that for you. But you pull it out of there and you extract the shaft from the selector. The pin, go in from underneath and drive it out the top because the pin is tapered. We'll have a look. The pin has got a very slight taper on it. The thick end, 195. The thin end, 187. Right, so they are tapered, and the way you knock them out is from underneath out the top. When you come to reassemble it, the detents go down. That's your lockout groove. These are your engaged detent grooves. So apparently the way you put this together is you put your lid on, you put your selector in place, and you bring your shaft down through and let it drop through. And then you can put the ball in and bring the shaft back up to put it in position. So we'll just pop that back together and we'll just pop that back in there for tonight. Through the week, I was messing on with this and I popped the bearing on. Now it went on here, and because it was tipped, it nipped a little bit, but once it was like the tapered roller bearing on the pinion shaft. Once it squared up, it literally dropped on. So I took it back off. I put in some 603 in here, and I popped it back on. Okay. Now this bearing in this seat here in the casting came out of my hand. Didn't have to be knocked out, didn't have to be pulled out. So when that one goes back in, again, that will be getting some 603 round there and slotted back into position. The outer race for the pinion bearing is in place, 603 in, and we've got replacement washers and a replacement nut and bolt that keep that in position. And we have here the outer race for the rear bearing on the lay shaft. Just pop them back in there. All the shims for this go in the front plate. So when we've come to put the front plate on, all the shims that give you your float on these shafts go into the front plate. And I think realistically that's it. That's all we're getting done. Wrap that up till later. That's all we're getting done this week. As I say, the weather has been atrocious, blown a gale. I'm surprised there wasn't more damage this morning when we got up. But it's been blown a gale, pouring a rain. And I know, like this, I can work on it inside. But in order for me to get in here, there's things here I have to go outside. And if it's raining, it just cannot happen. So unless Deb was to donate her kitchen table In which case, if Deb was to donate the kitchen table to her, we could have had this built up a couple of nights ago, couldn't we? Do you think that's going to happen? Nah, I don't think so either. Never mind. Those shafts were polished with a little bit of emery. One of them, that one, had to have a tiny little bit of grinding going on the back. Somebody has walloped the end with a hammer and they put a burr on it, but not only did they put a burr on the end, they put an upset in the outside. And you can see there where I've had to grind that upset off in order to get the selector off. It wasn't interfering with the selector in the casting, it was only interfering with the selector, with the rod through the selector. Right guys, well that's it. If the video's been useful, please give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. You'll catch up with the next video automatically. Somebody in YouTube will send you a little message saying we've released another video. The finished video for this should be out in the middle of the week. Complete, ready to go back in the tractor. Then we're just waiting for some decent weather so we can get all this emptied out, get the back axle off this, because that's going to be the easiest way to put it in. Back axle off, gearbox in, job put back together. Okay, so if it's been useful, please give us a thumbs up, like and subscribe, tell your mates, and remember, don't overthink it. It's only nuts and bolts. See you in the next one. Bye now. Stay safe.